Whispers in the gallery. Julian Hayes moved through the gallery like a shark through still water. Purposeful, measured, untouchable. At 40, his salt and pepper hair and tailored charcoal suit commanded respect without effort. Seattle's architectural wunderkind had built skyscrapers that redefined skylines across 3 continents. Yet the charity exhibition felt like an obligation rather than a pleasure. 20 minutes, he murmured to his assistant. Then we leave. The Pacific Northwest Botanical Society's annual fundraiser was good publicity. Sustainable design was his brand, after all. But these social functions drained him. Donors wanting photos, conversations that never penetrated beyond surface pleasantries. Exhausting. Then he saw it. Not the largest piece in the exhibition, nor the brightest, but something in the delicate watercolor illustration of a rare alpine flower breaking through mountain rock stopped him mid-stride. The precision was scientific, each detail anatomically perfect, yet the emotion inexplicable. Hope rendered in soft blues and defiant greens. "The artist is here tonight," said a voice beside him. The gallery director smiled, misreading his interest as potential patronage. "Lily Chen, first time exhibiting with us." Julian found himself nodding. "I'd like to meet her." She stood by a window separate from the mingling crowd. Petite, with flowing black hair pulled into a loose braid over one shoulder. She wore a simple emerald dress that reminded him of forest shadows, hands nervously adjusting her glasses as she spoke with an elderly couple. When the gallery director introduced them, her eyes widened slightly. No recognition. Refreshing. "Your work," Julian began, then paused. Words, typically his precision tools, failed him. "It's honest." Lily Chen smiled, revealing a small dimple in her right cheek. "That's the nicest compliment I've received tonight, Mr. Hayes." "Julian," he corrected automatically. "You capture something most botanical illustrations miss?" "The struggle," she said, glancing at her painting. "Everyone sees the beauty of flowers, but not what it costs them to bloom where they're not meant to survive." Something in her quiet observation resonated uncomfortably. Julian found himself studying her, early 30s perhaps, with intelligent eyes that noticed too much. "I'm designing a new research center for climate adaptation studies," he said abruptly. "The interiors need something authentic. Would you consider a commission?" Surprise flickered across her face. "I'm not an interior designer. I illustrate plants. Exactly what the space needs. Plants reclaiming human architecture. Future and past in conversation." The concept formed as he spoke it, unusual for someone who normally planned every detail before revealing it. She tilted her head, considering him with surprising directness. "Why me? There are more established artists here." The question was unexpected. Most people simply said yes to Julian Hayes. He found himself answering truthfully. "Because your work made me stop walking." He gestured around the gallery. "Nothing does that anymore." A slight blush colored her cheeks, but her gaze remained steady. "I'll need to see the space first. And discuss terms, of course, professional boundaries." He offered his card, suddenly aware of how close they stood, how the gallery lights caught amber flecks in her dark eyes. "My office will contact you tomorrow." As Julian left the gallery, his assistant hurried to keep pace. "Successful evening, sir?" He glanced back once, seeing Lily return to her painting, fingers lightly touching the frame as if connecting with an old friend. "Unexpectedly so," he murmured, the evening air carrying the promise of rain. For the first time in years, Julian Hayes felt something stir beneath the perfect architecture of his controlled existence, a hairline crack in foundations he'd thought impenetrable. Roots and steel lily arrived at Hayes, architecture precisely at 9, portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. The building, Julian's first major Seattle project, was a testament to glass and intention. Each angle purposeful, nothing frivolous, like the man himself, she thought. "Miss Chen." Julian emerged from an elevator, extending his hand. His grip was warm, firm. "Thank you for coming." The research center plans dominated his office, a massive table of blueprints and models. For 30 minutes, Julian spoke of sustainable materials and energy efficiency with unexpected passion. Lily found herself drawn not to the technical brilliance, but to how his eyes lit up when describing how the building would interact with its surroundings. "You care about this project differently," she observed during a pause. Julian's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. "It's my first design since my father's death." He believed architecture should serve nature, not conquer it. We disagreed on many things, but not that. The personal admission hung between them. "Unexpected and fragile." "Show me your other work," he said abruptly, gesturing to her portfolio. Lily spread her illustrations across the blueprint, detailed studies of native plants, their root systems as meticulously rendered as their flowers. Julian examined each without speaking, his fingers occasionally tracing the line of a stem or the curve of a leaf. "These roots," he finally said, pointing to a drawing of sword ferns breaking through concrete. "They're finding pathways where they shouldn't exist." "Nature always finds a way through," Lily replied. "Even in the most hostile environments." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. "That's what I want for the center." The resilience story. They spent the afternoon discussing installation spaces. When Julian suggested they continue over dinner, Lily surprised herself by accepting. The small Italian restaurant was clearly a regular spot for him. The owner greeted Julian by name, leading them to a quiet corner table. Over pasta and wine, conversation shifted from professional to personal. Lily spoke of growing up in her parents' plant nursery in Oregon, finding solace in drawing what grew around her. "And you?" she asked. "Were you always destined for architecture?" Julian's smile faded slightly. "My father built community centers. My mother designed private estates. I was raised on construction sites and drafting tables." He rotated his wine glass slowly. "When they divorced, I lived with my grandmother. She taught mathematics at the university. Precision, logic, structure, better foundations." The implied criticism of his parents hung unspoken. Lily understood instinctively that Julian had built himself with the same exacting standards he applied to his buildings. No weaknesses allowed, no imperfections tolerated. "So you became the perfect synthesis. Mathematical precision with creative vision," she observed. Julian looked startled, as if she'd seen something he hadn't intended to reveal. "Not perfect, functional." "There's beauty in functionality," Lily said softly, "but also in imperfection. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in flaws and transience." "Sounds inefficient," he replied, but his eyes held curiosity rather than dismissal. Rain began to fall as they left the restaurant, a gentle Seattle mist that blurred the city lights. Julian insisted on driving her home. His car smelled of leather and subtle cologne. The radio tuned to classical music. Outside her modest apartment building, he walked her to the door, umbrella held carefully to shield her completely, even at the expense of his own shoulder growing damp. "I'd like you to start as soon as possible," Julian said. "The commission details will be finalized tomorrow." Lily nodded, suddenly aware of how close they stood beneath the umbrella's protection. "I'll begin sketches this weekend." Something unspoken passed between them, acknowledgement that whatever was happening extended beyond professional boundaries. Neither moved to define it. "Good night, Lily," Julian said finally, her name soft on his lips like a secret. As his car disappeared into the rain-slicked streets, Lily pressed her hand against her door, feeling her heartbeat against her palm. For a woman who spent her life observing details, this feeling was entirely new, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Behind his carefully constructed walls, Julian Hayes was a mystery she found herself desperately wanting to solve. Rain-soaked confessions. 3 weeks into the project, Seattle's infamous weather unleashed its full power. Rain pounded against the windows of Julian's penthouse as they reviewed Lily's preliminary designs. Thunder shook the glass walls, electricity flickering ominously. "You should stay," Julian said, watching sheets of water cascade down the windows. "The roads will be dangerous." Lily hesitated, then nodded. The storm had made the decision for her. Julian moved with practiced efficiency, providing a guest room, clothes to borrow, necessities. Yet beneath the perfect host facade, she sensed tension. Having someone in his private space clearly unsettled him. Later, as lightning illuminated the cityscape, they sat in his minimalist living room. Julian poured aged whiskey into crystal tumblers, the amber liquid catching the storm's blue-white flashes. To unexpected weather, he toasted, and unexpected company, she added. The alcohol warmed her chest, loosening something tight within her. They talked about art, about his travels, about everything except what was building between them. When the power finally surrendered to the storm, Julian lit candles, their warm glow softening the hard edges of his carefully designed space. "Do you ever feel trapped by the life you've built?" Lily asked suddenly, watching shadows play across his features. Julian's eyes met hers, startlingly vulnerable in the candlelight. "Every day. Why?" He moved to the window, silhouette stark against the storm beyond. "Excellence demands sacrifice. Relationships, spontaneity, weakness, all liabilities." "That sounds lonely," she said softly. "Efficient," he corrected, but without conviction. "Is that why you're alone? Efficiency?" Julian turned, his expression unreadable. "Why are you?" The directness startled her. Lily looked down at her hands. "I've never connected, not really. My work, my plants, they've been enough, safer." "Safer than what?" "Than being vulnerable with someone who might not understand." She met his gaze. "I'm 29 and I've never been truly intimate with anyone. It sounds ridiculous at my age." "It's not ridiculous," Julian said quietly. "It's rare, valuable." The candlelight flickered between them as he moved closer, sitting beside her. "What are you afraid of, Lily?" "Disappointment," she whispered. "Theirs. Mine. I don't know how to be what someone else needs." "I understand that fear," he admitted, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it. "Perfectly." His hand found hers in the dim light, fingers intertwining slowly, deliberately. The simple contact sent electricity through her that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "You're shaking," he murmured, his free hand brushing her cheek. "Because I never expected to feel understood," she whispered. Julian's eyes darkened. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. Their lips met, tentative, questioning, then with growing certainty. Lily's hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling solid strength beneath expensive fabric. The kiss deepened, years of careful restraint dissolving between them. Julian pulled back first, breathing uneven. "I don't want to rush you," he said, forehead resting against hers. "I've waited my whole life," Lily replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "I'm not rushing. I'm finally arriving." His bedroom was surprisingly warm, deep blues and grays rather than stark monochrome. Julian's hands trembled slightly as he undressed her, each movement a question she answered with whispered consent. Their coming together was gentle at first, his experience tempered by her newness, her enthusiasm balanced by his control. When discomfort gave way to pleasure, Lily found herself overwhelmed not by sensation alone, but by the intensity in Julian's eyes as he watched her, as if discovering something precious and unexpected. "Stay with me," he whispered afterward, arms encircling her protectively. Outside, the storm gradually subsided, but something far more powerful had been unleashed within the walls Julian had spent a lifetime constructing. Blooming in the shadows, the following weeks unfolded in a dreamlike haze. By day, they maintained professional boundaries at the research center site. By night, Julian's penthouse became their sanctuary, a place where both could slowly unfurl parts of themselves long kept hidden. For Lily, it was an awakening. Julian approached her body with the same reverent attention he gave to his designs, learning her, memorizing her, bringing forth responses she never knew herself capable of. For the first time, she understood why humans had written poetry about physical love for centuries. For Julian, the transformation ran deeper. Colleagues noticed small changes, schedules slightly relaxed, meetings occasionally rescheduled. Minor shifts that signaled seismic changes within. "You seem different," his project manager commented one afternoon. Julian merely nodded, returning to his blueprints. He couldn't explain how waking with Lily curled against him had rearranged his priorities, how her gentle persistence was teaching him that control and contentment were not the same thing. Their bubble of happiness burst unexpectedly on a crisp autumn morning. Julian found Lily in his kitchen, face pale, phone clutched in her hand. "The community garden," she said, voice shaking. "The one I've been illustrating near the International District. Meridian Development just bought the block. They're demolishing everything next month." Julian stiffened. Marcus Meridian was not only a major developer, but his largest current client. The luxury condominium project represented millions in revenue for his firm. "These neighborhoods need green spaces," Lily continued, anguish evident. "The garden feeds immigrant families, provides community, connection. They can't just—" "It's business, Lily," Julian interrupted, professional mask sliding into place. "Development is inevitable." Her expression shifted, disappointment replacing distress. "Is that the architect speaking or the man?" The question lingered between them all day as Julian moved through meetings, his mind divided. By evening, he'd made a decision that surprised even himself. At the Meridian Development Board meeting, Julian presented an alternative design, one incorporating the community garden as a centerpiece rather than eliminating it. When Marcus Meridian objected to the reduced profit margin, Julian quietly withdrew his firm from the project. Later that night, he found Lily in his living room surrounded by her sketches. "Why did you do it?" she asked, having already heard through Seattle's tight-knit design community. Julian sat beside her, hands clasped between his knees. "Because you made me see what I'd forgotten. Buildings serve people, not the other way around." Tears filled her eyes. "You sacrifice millions. I gained something more valuable." He took her hand. Perspective. That night, their lovemaking held new urgency, gratitude and wonder mingling with desire. As Lily moved above him, Julian realized he was no longer merely existing, but fully alive. Every sensation magnified by emotional connection. Afterward, watching her sleep, Julian confronted a startling truth. He was falling in love with Lily Chen, not just her body or her talent, but her steadfast belief that beauty and purpose could coexist. That vulnerability was not weakness, but courage. The realization terrified him. Love meant relinquishing control, accepting uncertainty, everything he'd spent his life avoiding. Yet as dawn broke over Seattle, painting Lily's bare shoulder in golden light, Julian understood he'd already crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Some transformations, once begun, could not be reversed. The architecture of love. The consequences of Julian's decision rippled through Seattle's business community like an earthquake. Longtime associates distanced themselves. Rumors circulated about his stability. Marcus Meridian, furious at being publicly rejected, began a whisper campaign questioning Hayes Architecture's financial soundness. "You should never have done it," his board chairman argued during a tense meeting. "Not for a community garden. Not for anyone." Julian remained unmoved. "My decision stands." What he didn't say was that Lily had awakened something dormant within him. His father's belief that architecture should enhance communities, not exploit them. The garden project had merely been the catalyst. At home, Lily watched his transformation with wonder and concern. "I never meant to disrupt your life," she said one evening as they walked along the waterfront. Julian stopped, turning to face her. "You disrupted my perspective, not my life." "There's a difference." The installation at the research center neared completion. Lily's illustrations transposed onto glass panels that would filter sunlight throughout the building. Plant life reclaiming human structures, growth emerging from decay. Her vision manifested on a scale she'd never imagined possible. Their relationship deepened even as external pressures mounted. Julian found himself sharing childhood memories he'd buried decades ago. His father's bankruptcy, his mother's subsequent abandonment, the cold precision of his grandmother's love. Lily spoke of her immigrant parents' sacrifice. Their nursery business always one season away from failure. Her art both escape and tribute. In each other's histories, They recognized parallel paths, two people who had channeled early pain into meticulous work, finding safety in control and precision. The research center's opening drew near. Julian worked longer hours, often returning to find Lily asleep among her drawings in his living room. The sight always stopped him. This talented, gentle woman who had somehow bypassed every defense he'd constructed. One night, returning late, he found her awake, sitting by the windows overlooking the city. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble, "about us. What happens when the project ends?" Julian felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "What do you want to happen?" "That depends," Lily replied, meeting his gaze directly. "On whether this was ever more than temporary for you." The question hung between them, the one they'd both carefully avoided. Julian crossed to her, kneeling before her chair. "I built my life on certainty," he said slowly. "Measurable outcomes, predictable results." His hands found hers, holding tight. "Then you walked into that gallery and suddenly nothing was certain anymore. Is that good or bad?" She whispered. "Terrifying," he admitted. "And the most alive I've felt in 30 years. Julian reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small object, not a ring, but a key. "Move in with me," he said. "Not just staying over. Living here." "With me?" Lily's eyes widened. "Julian, or we find a new place together. Somewhere with natural light for your work. A terrace for plants." The words rushed out, unplanned. "I don't care where. I just want to build something with you, Lily. Something real." Tears spilled onto her cheeks as she took the key, fingers closing around it. "I've never belonged anywhere that wasn't temporary." "Neither have I," Julian confessed. "Maybe that's why we recognized each other." The research center opened to critical acclaim. Julian's reputation, temporarily damaged by the Meridian controversy, rebounded as sustainability advocates championed his ethical stance. But it was Lily, standing quietly beside him at the opening, whose approval mattered most. As guests admired her installations, light filtering through illustrated glass, casting botanical shadows across concrete floors, Julian watched her face. Pride, yes, but something deeper. Belonging. Later that night, as they stood on their terrace under stars rarely visible through Seattle's cloud cover, Julian finally spoke the words he'd been rehearsing for weeks. "I love you, Lily Chen." She turned in his arms, face tilted upward. No hesitation, no doubt. "And I love you, Julian Hayes." In the city below, lights glimmered like earthbound stars. Julian thought of blueprints and foundations, of structures designed to withstand pressure and time. What he and Lily had built together had no physical form, couldn't be drawn or modeled, yet felt more solid than any building he'd ever created. Love, he was discovering, had its own architecture, invisible but essential. And like any worthwhile structure, it began not with walls, but with the courage to break ground.